somewhat conservative, but let's take God and Jesus out of it. Is there a chance of that happening?
Well, I mean, that's a fight the Republican Party is going to have. But I think, the party so far seems to have doubled down on Sarah Palin, who really represents, in getting God and everything.
Stupidity. I think she represents stupidity. She's the one person that I find myself being a little bit smarter than. I mean, I'm not a very smart man. I barely graduated high school, but I feel as if I probably am just a tad smarter than her a point or two.
I don't think people understand how extreme she is, and I write in the book, and there's video of this, about how she was anointed in 2005 in a public ceremony in her church by a self-proclaimed Kenyan witch fighter, a guy who says he fights witches. Laid hands on Sarah Palin and anointed her against the spirit of witchcraft. And a year later, and there's video of this too on YouTube, she went before her church and said that this ceremony propelled her into the governor's office, being anointed against witchcraft. She really believes in that stuff. If the McCain campaign had vetted her at all, she never would have been on the national stage. But at the same time, she was the only logical choice as vice president because the movement that controls the party hates John McCain, even though he devoted 30 years of his life to public service and is a war hero.
Because he's not a Bible-banging, God-loving, homo-hating guy so much.
Yeah.
And he's kind of, he's kind of what the Republican Party should be, a war hero, an old-timer, doesn't really bind then he's now officially the outcast.
Yeah, and you get someone who doesn't even know what magazine she reads, and they still love her.
Yeah. That just show, you know what, Max, more than anything, and your book might just exploit how pathetic we are as Americans. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if we're going to continue to allow this to happen underneath our nose, how pathetic are we?
Well, there are a lot of Americans who are pathetic, who are easily exploited, and they can be told anything, and they have these issues in their lives. You and I think we can moderate our behavior. We can be hot tub Tommy, but we can get out of the hot tub and wash ourselves off and not be so disgusted with ourselves. But then there are these people who have these issues, and they're defining the party.
But I think the difference between you and I, Max, is you and I can be hot tub Tommy, and we don't have to lie to anybody who's going to be doing business with us and say, yeah, I'm hot tub Tommy, but what's the problem with that? I'm not doing anything wrong, but I don't have to act like I don't have to be anything that I'm not because, we lay it out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a question of shame, and it's why I talk about Mel Gibson in the book. He's the top propagandist of this movement. He's the only one who's able to make a profit. And at the end of his movies, what happens? The protagonist is always has his body torn apart while he's screaming freedom. Whether it's Braveheart or The Passion of the Christ, these movies are all about sadomasochism and destroying your body because the movement believes that the body is dirty. And so the real freedom is being freed from all of your sexual urges and becoming and rising up to heaven. And they see politics as that too. Politics for them is a way of transcending themselves and becoming something that's bigger than them because they're disgusted with themselves and their own desires.
Brent, let me ask you a question. Aren't you the one that said that George Washington said that the two-party system would destroy our country?
Yes, that's exactly what he said.
Max, we need an alternative. Unfortunately, Ron Paul gets spun as a complete nut job by the media, but and he doesn't have a good presentation. But I got to say that he's got the best message of all, kind of like be responsible for your own stuff, and let's go back to the way it's supposed to be and strip it on down to zero. And
don't be a dildo.
Don't be a dildo, and the Federal Reserve and the Department of Education. It makes a lot of sense. What's your opinion on him?
Well, he's an old-style conservative who doesn't want... Look, the Christian right is not a conservative movement. They want big government. They want the government in everyone's bedroom. I watched Rick Santorum, Mr. Man on Dog, attack libertarians in a speech.
Now, why do you call him Man on Dog? Did he have sex with a dog?
He warned to a reporter from the Associated Press. He said, homosexuality will lead to man-on-dog sex. And the reporter replied, I'm freaking out here.
That Rick Santorum's okay in your book, huh?
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
I saw him say in a speech, the libertarian Republicans, the conservatives, they want government out of our bedroom. But I respond to them, there are human beings in that bedroom. Right. This is a totalitarian mentality. And Ron Paul opposes that, and he only gets 2% of the Republican vote. If he ran in the Democratic primary, he might do better.
How sad is that?
What's that, Brett?
I was going to say, what do you know about C Street and David Coe and the family and how they control things in Washington?
Well, you saw what recently happened with John Ensign, who I talked about before. Well, he lived in the C Street house, and his roommate was Tom Coburn, who used to be a baby doctor from Oklahoma and was accused of after that he was an anti-condom activist who worked in the Bush administration.
Anti-condom.
Yeah, this guy might be all right.
How can that ever be anything responsible? Anti-condom.
Hey man,
crazy, right?
Don't knock it till you try.
No, they're abstinence only
story.
Oh.
He tried to have condoms labeled that they would not be effective. He failed. He was elected to the Senate. Running in a debate, he declared that he favored the death penalty for abortion doctors. He is sort of the ultimate sexual moralist of the Republican Party. And for 18 months, while he was John Enson's roommate, he knew that John Ensign was stooping one of his staffers, the wife of his best friend, and that his parents, who own a casino in Vegas, were paying her and her husband hush money. And Tom Coburn kept it all under wraps because they belonged to this C Street house on Capitol Hill, which is a Christian men's fellowship, where they believe they only have to answer to Jesus and that they don't have to answer to the American people. Another congressman, Chip Pickering, right-wing Republican from Mississippi, was screwing his mistress inside C Street house, and they all knew about it and didn't say anything about that. And so basically you had an evangelical frat house on the Hill, kind of like Macho Manor, and they were all covering each other's asses because they believe they only need to answer to Jesus, and Jesus has anointed them for leadership.
And get this, C Street is listed as a church, and they're tax exempt.
Yeah.
I
Wow.
mean, how about
and they live there for free. Politicians live there for free.
And you wonder why I don't trust a thing the government says.
Right. Now, Max, as much as you've, targeted the Republican, party in your book, obviously out now, Republican Gomorrah, Inside the Movement of the Shattered Party, available probably anywhere. I mean, it's a very, very nice book. Probably Barnes & Noble's, Amazon, anywhere you buy your books. Is that true, Max?
It's available at my website, too, maxblumenthal.com.
And we'll have a link on my website, btls.com, to go to Max. Max, I mean, could you have a heyday with the Democrats as well? I mean, have you done a book about them, or are they as shady? Or, I mean, let's give equal time here.
I mean, the Democrat, you had Elliot Spitzer do his thing, too. I mean, the difference is that the Democrats aren't trying to regulate other people's private lives while they do.
Two things. One, the Democrats tend to pick women, and two, they're not trying to stand behind Jesus so bad.
Exactly. So Elliot Spitzer's scandal is actually interesting, though. He was the governor of New York, and he was caught in having an affair with this high-priced escort. But he was the victim of a government sting operation. And how did they find out about this under the Bush administration? They learned about it through a veteran Republican operative who got his start under Nixon. He was one of Nixon's dirty tricksters.
Oh, imagine that, Tricky Dicky Nixon, huh?
But his name is Roger Stone, and he openly admits that he is a swinger, and he hangs out in swinger clubs in Miami, and he found out about Elliot Spitzer through a friend because his friend was a pimp who was hiring out this prostitute.
Oh, that's
told
nice.
his Republican buddy.
Again, those that live in glass houses, right?
Well, right. I mean, Roger Stone had to resign from, I think it was the Bush 1 campaign, because his personal ads were discovered in a swinger magazine.
And this is the guy that
a man to have sex with him and his wife.
And this was a guy that dimed out Elliot, right? Not to bring down what Elliot did was right, but this is the guy that dimed out Elliot. It was the guy that had to leave Bush 1.
Yep, he brags about it.
Now let me ask you a question. One last.